Hi, my name is Keith Kunene, host of Starter Convos. We're recording live today from the Nest Space, which is a yoga studio in Greenside, Johannesburg. Just had a very beautiful conversation with Winnie Zwane, who's left the comforts of the corporate world for a more untraditional setting of the practice of hypnotherapy. She's been doing that for about 2 years, and today we speak to her about her world, and we unlock insights on her practice and how that's beneficial for humanity. Hope you enjoy the conversation.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Winnie, hi.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Good, thank you. So I usually don't like introductions.
Okay.
You guys know. I like to get straight into the
That's
conversation.
fine. Okay.
And we'll introduce you at the end. We'll do like a formal introduction at the end of the session. But you know, one of the things that really was striking about you and your story was the fact that you actually were in corporate before, and you basically left corporate to work in a more sort of untraditional setting, which is hypnotherapy. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the background of that story?
Okay. Okay, I'll take you just a little bit back, because I think everything is linked to the next thing, But when I go back, when I finished my matric, I really wasn't sure what it is that I wanted to do. So because I had a science background in mathematics, and biology was literally good in those subjects, I ended up going for something in science. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So for me, ending up here is not really a coincidence, simply because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I went and I studied. Firstly, I studied geology.
Geology?
Geology.
Okay.
And then graduated, and I had a sponsor, which are now known as Marikana, the Marikana mines. Then it was Londro Platinum Mines. And I had a sponsor from them, and so during holidays, I would literally go and work for them as part of serving my obligations as they were taking me through school. And I loved it, and I would say I loved it simply because it was a different environment. However, when I graduated, I just didn't feel that environment was for me, and for me to leave, to get out of my obligations for them, because I needed to work for them, I simply said I don't find it safe. And because I was a woman, they let me go just as easy, like that, without me repaying the bursary. So I got off, and then I went to University of Natal to study BCom Finance. And when I studied BCom Finance, I graduated
to BCom Finance. That's like completely different worlds.
I think if you look at it, I was actually lost. I just didn't know. But all I know is that I was good. I loved studying, and because I had never really experienced failure, so studying was natural for me. Because each time I studied, I would pass. And then I went to Natal, and I did BCom Finance. Also, I'll let you know, I didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. And I remember I used to have a friend, a very close friend of mine, who loved the corporate look, how she used to look, how you would look, and we would fantasize about working for corporate with laptops on, with high heels and suits. And
living the life.
Yes, living the life, absolutely. That's what I saw myself as. And also I had a sponsor. Standard Corporate and Merchant Bank sponsored me.
So you kept on having all these different sponsors.
Because you go there, you write tests, they interview you, you pass, and because all they look at is IQ. They don't look at whether are you a good match for the career you want. So, and then I worked for them for a year, and in that 1 year when I finished, it was insane, because first of all, that's why I discovered I actually don't like wearing suits. I used to battle. I would walk into the office wearing high heels, and as soon as I walk in, I would take off my shoes and wear slops. And sometimes I would even walk barefoot in the office if I forget. And when I go to the toilet, I would have to put on my heels, and sometimes I'd forget. I'd walk with my slops, and it was a no-no back then. So So this is just to say that that's the environment I came in, and because I had never seen anyone else do something different than working for corporate, I also just went for that. So the switch comes in when I was doing my last year in Natal. Then I met a guy who actually, a friend, he was a very good friend of mine. He had a car accident and he broke his spine. And he was told that he would never walk again and he would not be able to go back to study. The accident was really huge, yeah. And it happened during school holidays. That's what he was told, because I think it broke one of the T-bones in here. I think it's that, yeah. And then this guy comes back a month later. He shows up in a walking stick. He can walk.
This is a month later?
This is a month later.
After being told
he couldn't walk.
Okay.
And then I asked him, what happened? How come you can walk? And then he starts telling me that when he was in hospital, he would see people. He would, in his mind, he would see people working on his spine. And one of the nurses actually came and told him that don't listen what the doctors say to you. If you believe you can walk again, you will walk. And as a result, he used to do visualizations, and then he would see people working, doing work on his spine. And a month later, he could walk. And he was a ballroom dancer. They told him he would never dance again. And now he's now actually still dancing. He still does ballroom dancing. So that's when I started being interested in that. And then he used to go to a different church, and I started going to him in that church just to get to understand what is it that they do in these different churches.
So you got interested in the aspect of him being able to walk,
yeah,
or just the sheer sort of will, to actually push himself to a position that he could now walk again?
I suppose it was both, hey, because for me it was intriguing that how could someone who has been told that they cannot walk again a month later be able to walk? And it wasn't a mistake, because when you looked at his X-rays, you could see that his spine was broken, and this person is not supposed to be able to walk, but he could walk.
Seems quite miraculous, actually.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like a miracle. But then the more I spent time with him, the more he introduced me into astral travel. He actually started introducing me to another world that I didn't even know existed.
So talk about astral travel a little, and we'll get back to the story. But I just want to.
No, we can leave that. Yeah. However, I don't. To be honest with you, because I've never really done astral travel, so it just from hearing from him is that you could at night when everybody sleeps, kind of like your soul travels, and then you can go and do other things elsewhere, and then still come back into your body. Either your soul or spirit is one of that. But he used to tell me stories that, people, you can do this, you can do this. So almost like taking me to this fear that I understood that life is black and white. Like there's this underworld that nobody talks about, that we don't even know exists.
Okay, back to the story.
Okay, back to the story of how I...
Yeah, of how you transitioned. After hearing the stories from him.
And then from there, because the company that sponsored me was here in Johannesburg, and I started also attending meditations here in Johannesburg. But at that time, mostly it was white people who did the work, and it was quite pricey. So I made a decision to move to Durban, because I wanted to learn more about these things. And in my head, I thought to myself, but all these things are from the East. So Indians know these things better than everyone else. And where in South Africa do you find Indians? In Durban? And that's how I literally moved to Durban, because I thought to myself, I would get to Durban and actually be able to afford these things and be able to learn and live among them and see how they actually incorporate these different things, like of spiritual things, into their lives. And then I moved to Durban, and when I got to Durban, the first thing that introduced me was I was introduced to was Reiki, which I used to do, and eventually trained as a Reiki healer.
Okay. However, what's Reiki for those of us who might
It's energy healing. It's basically energy healing, where you channel energy into the person's being. So you heal with energy. So you literally use your hands, but you don't touch the client. They are at a distance, and you can actually feel the energies of the person, and then almost like manipulate the energies with for well-being with the energy that you transmit. It's almost like you become a vessel. You don't use your energy; it's universal energy, but you channel it through you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at which point do you decide to completely abandon the corporate world?
Okay, it wasn't really a conscious choice, I'll tell you. And it wasn't a conscious choice. It happened. Actually, it's almost like a decision was made for me. I think while I was in Durban, a lot of things happened. I got married and I had kids. So, and when things didn't go well in my marriage, the stress of having to raise kids on your own and having to work as well got into me. So stress and I started feeling like I wasn't well and I wasn't sure what is it. And sometimes you can see that you're not well and you think you're the only one, but other people can see you're not well as well. So I wasn't well. And I remember when there was a US company bought our company, we all had to do sort of like your aptitude test where they need to see where another person fits, where you fit.
So you actually re-interview for your position?
It wasn't re-interview. I didn't re-interview. They literally had to do tests just to see if where you are is where you should be, or maybe they should put in other departments. And while doing those aptitude tests, I scored I scored very well. And then they decided that I'm not suited for brand management. They were going to move me into research and strategy because that's where I was more suitable for. And then it went from being waiting for, and the position was created, that's where I was going to move. And it went from actually being told that we're moving you here, we're starting this department, you are going the one who's going to head this department. And 2 weeks later, oh, you're not performing. And then
more stress.
Exactly. More stress. Before I was even moved, it was like, no, you're not performing. And then I thought to myself, oh my goodness, what the hell is this? So I was put on a management program. Management program, passed it, went well, but it was highly stressful. And then 2 months later, I realized, you know what, I can't do this. It's actually hectic. But then you have kids to take care of. You've got a whole life you have to maintain. You have to maintain your house. You have to maintain, you have to pay your financial obligations are still there at the end of the month. And then 2 months later, they come back again. Oh, you're still not performing. But I'm like, okay, how is this possible? Not performing. Everything goes well, and then I'm not performing. And then I just decided, you know what, maybe this is just a way out for me. Then I literally just got a lawyer, and I just said, Winnie, you know what, I've worked here as well. This is what they do when they actually want to let you go. This is what I suggest we do. I suggest we just come back with a proposal to say, we understand what it is that you're wanting to do, you get a package and you leave. And literally that's how I did it. And that's how I left, yeah.
Okay. And did you go straight into hypnotherapy at the point? Or
I was studying hypnotherapy at that point, and I hadn't qualified as yet, and I didn't actually go into it. I just took a break and I stayed home. I stayed home for like 2-3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I stayed home for like 2-3 years.
Was that a good time for you to
sort
of recalibrate and see what you really wanted to do?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was a good time in a sense that I was less stressed, and I actually studied life coaching, which I thought I was going to do, because then I didn't know much if there was anything I could do with hypnotherapy in South Africa, because I tried before and there wasn't a school in South Africa that taught hypnotherapy. So I did coaching, and the more I started doing coaching, I actually realized that something was lacking with coaching, because even though the coaching that I did was worked with the brain, so it's almost like rewiring the brain, there was something that was just missing. For example, for someone who comes to you with issues of procrastination, you actually teach person how to work around it, but you don't really solve the issue. And depending on how severe the issue is, the person, it means they have to live with it for the rest of their lives. And I just thought to myself, something is missing. And I also just didn't feel quite as if this is what I was meant to do for my life. Yeah. Then I went ahead and then I started hypnotherapy. Yeah, I started hypnotherapy, and then I stopped.
Were you teaching yourself? Were you
No, I was studying. I went to an institution.
Okay.
I went to an institution, yeah. Okay. And then I stopped, and without knowing why I stopped. And it was only after I had been through hypnotherapy myself that I realized what it is that was stopping me. And I also realized that what was happening with me when I was corporate and I was not performing. Actually had chronic fatigue.
Okay. And is that, I'm trying to get into now you studying hypnotherapy and wanting to do it as a practice.
Yeah.
Is it linked to the story you were talking about of the guy who had an accident, who couldn't walk?
Not actually.
Is it somehow linked?
Oh my word, no, not actually. Actually, okay. How it's linked is that before I went to Durban, before I moved to Durban, a friend of mine heard about past life regressions. And then she came to me and told me that she's heard about past life regression. Have you heard about it? And I had never heard of past life regression. But somehow when I just heard that word, I knew I wanted to know more about that. It's almost like it resonated with me. And as a result, because things were priced in Joburg, I couldn't even do it. So that's when I moved to Durban. When I moved to Durban, I still couldn't find people who actually could do past life regressions for you. So it became that thing that you're interested in, but you don't know what it's about, but you know it really resonates. So I started reading books on hypnotherapy. I started reading books, and then I got even more interested into it. And I kept on searching, and I found that there were schools in London, literally, that would do hypnotherapy. And then I moved into London at some point. Even though I never got to study it, I had to come back and then study it. When I came back from London, there already was a school in South Africa. That's when I started studying it. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm interested because, hypnotherapy is not something that a lot of people would naturally gravitate towards. Yeah. In fact, it has a bit of a stigma, actually. I had a session with you recently to test it out. I was a bit scared, to be honest.
Are you serious?
I was a bit scared, but I think I got, you relaxed me into what was happening. But I remember talking to a friend of mine after the session, and she'd gone through a whole lot of different life situations. She moved to Germany at some point. Her parents were in exile in America, and they were separated, and all these things. And when we were having the conversation, she was actually scared to engage in hypnotherapy. Yeah. And it didn't surprise me at all, because I was also scared. But can you just talk about why there's such a big stigma around hypnotherapy?
Actually, honestly, I don't know why there's such a big stigma against hypnotherapy. But one of the things I know is that people take what they see from movies and think that's what it is in real life, whereas it's not. And also, I think churches, actually, they are also against hypnotherapy, and they say it's devil work, or devil worship, whatever it is. I don't know what they say. But with me, I've never been one to listen to what the crowd say. So if something, I think that's I would say something I've been blessed with. If something resonates with me, I'll explore it and see if it works, and if it still resonates. And if it no longer resonates, I'll just literally ditch it and move on and adopt something else. And this has literally stuck with me, and it stuck for different reasons. One of them, because I've actually transformed my life using hypnotherapy. I know where I was when I tell you with chronic fatigue, and I didn't know what was going on, and everybody would tell you go to Sizangomas and all of that, because something is not right. When the medical field cannot tell you what is wrong with you, or they can tell you, oh, you are tired, or it's chronic fatigue, take this you're depressed, take antidepressants. And as much as I have tried, but if I take a medication, after a week I forget about it. It's like I cannot be on prolonged medication. Maybe that's how just my system works. And I just thought to myself, there's gotta be more to life than this life that we are all told about, that we live. Like, there's gotta be a solution somewhere. There's no way that we could be brought in onto this plane and there's no solution, and solution is popping a pill. I think that's, that was my drive for me. There's gotta be a solution, and I don't know where that came from, but that's what I had,
So how long have you been practicing that?
It's been 2 years now.
2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And how has it transformed your life in the 2 years of your practice?
Okay, it has transformed in so many ways, but I think the more transformation happened for me when I was going through therapy myself, how working, just doing this live, and it's also, how it has transformed is just seeing people when they walk in and when they walk out, because you work with the brainwaves. You can see when the person walks in the energy, and as they walk out, they're completely transformed. You can literally see them on their face that it's almost like you've lit some neurons, a different neuron than when they came in. But also the insights that people give you when you listen to them. Just to give an example, I had a client who had an issue with feeling abandoned. And when we went back, she went into a point where she was just before she was born. And we all come from different backgrounds in terms of religion. But she could, because when you go there, you can tell that, okay, I'm at the point where I'm born. I'm like, how do you know? She says, because I can see everything else, the situations that I'm going to be born into. I can literally see. I can see my parents are arguing, and I know that after I'm born, this madness is not going to stop. And I have anxiety because I don't want to be born into this situation. And literally, that's where the anxiety came from. So we literally, so it was this anxiety of feeling abandoned. And then when I was there, I asked if I could ask a personal question, because where she is, we are all connected, and she can just tap to whatever it is that she needs to tap to and tell me the answer. And I can't remember what answer I actually asked. And she said to me, you know what, we come here all to learn. We are all connected. So it's almost like there's a group of, you're sent down to go and learn. And when you learn on behalf of everyone else. It doesn't just become your own knowledge. You learn
it sounds very woo.
I know, but
very esoteric.
It does. I know it does. It sounds very esoteric, but that's what you get, because you never know what you're gonna come across when someone comes in. So you never know. Someone would come in with an anxiety issue, and when you go back, you actually realize that maybe like I tell you, the parents were arguing, and it's that discomfort of people arguing, because I don't think people enjoy seeing people arguing. So just that anxiety of saying, oh my God, this is the situation I'm going to be born into, and it's different. Another one actually had an issue. It was also self-worth, low self-worth, right? And how it turned out was that her dad wanted the mother to abort the child. And as they're having a conversation, because the child is in the tummy, they hear all these conversations happening. And because at that age, your intellect is not as developed, so you think the issue is you, so you are the problem. And therefore, you are born into a situation where you don't feel worthy because your dad wanted you aborted.
That's interesting to me, and I want to pick up on that for a second. Because you're talking about, and I use the word woo, that it sounds very esoteric.
Yes.
But now that I think about the situation that you're referring to of a baby, before being born, and you can hear the conversations, they can hear the vibrations that are going on around them.
Yeah.
I think about how my mom, for instance, used to say, you should sing to the kid or read them a book before they're even born. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? And she said, well, they connect on some level to what is happening around, and they absorb all of those different energies even before they're born.
African wisdom, there's a lot of worth in African wisdom. Just to add into that before I answer you, is that I think especially in the KZN, the wisdom that is that when you are pregnant, you should behave a certain way. You shouldn't mix with certain people. You shouldn't go partying. You shouldn't go this. There's a lot of rules. And as now, when we grow up, we just think, they're old-fashioned. But through this therapy, I've realized there's wisdom in the things that they used to say. Like you say, when you actually do that, you reach to a child before they're born, you are forming a bond. And what happens is, because that's what you do for the child, when the child is born, they naturally gravitate towards those activities that you used to do with them. And that is why what you'll find is that when a mother is a singer, and the mother used to sing when the child was pregnant, that's all the child knows. It's already programmed. The neurons that form in the child when they're still in the tummy, that neuron becomes strong, because that's all the mother used to do. therefore they also grow up and they gravitate towards music, or they gravitate towards the arts. So there's a lot of value in that. Yeah,
I want to pick up on that as well. You know, this idea of neurons and the formation of neurons and all of that, because I realized that in the session that I had with you, in fact, what was happening is that I was creating different links, you know, and sort of formulating sort of new pathways to traverse. And I would go to a certain place that might be negative, and I would sort of talk to that specific energy that's happening there and reprogram it into a more positive outcome. And I practiced that actually for 2 weeks after I went to your session, and I found that, you know, my associations would change. So do you want to talk about that?
Okay. What you do? Okay, let me just think how to. Okay, what happens is when we do, especially because there's different methods that you can use. So the first session that we normally do is just to test what it is that's happening and to see how strong your resources are inside you. I'll do a couple of therapies just to test that. Excuse me, as one of them is the inner child. So when it comes to that, so brainwaves, I don't know if I should start, like neural pathways, right? Neural pathways, they start forming when the baby is in the tummy. So that's, for example, if the mother is depressed, that's a neural pathway that you're forming for a child. It's almost like you are wiring your child for depression. For example, let's say someone, you're pregnant when you're 16. You can't tell your parents. Your parents didn't even know you're sexually active. And that fear that comes with you discovering you're pregnant and not even knowing if the father will be there to see this through. It's all transferring. And because it's the emotions you feel, we are taught to believe that the child eats from what we eat, but also the emotions, the child carries the emotion that we feel at that point in time. So when you are feeling depressed and you have fear, you don't know what's going to happen. The child takes on.
So it's also brain food.
Absolutely, yes. It's also almost like that's how the neural pathway starts forming. So you start forming those neural pathways where you are driven by fear, where everything you do, your natural emotion is fear, or it could be anger or sadness, depending on how the mother is feeling. And then, so basically, that's why when you say the emotions and your thoughts and your habits start forming between 0 and 7 years of age, and 0 being the tummy, being in the time because you come out, it's already. But as you are born, these things get reinforced. For example, someone who grows up in a home where they are poor and all they see is struggle, and that person later on in life will think life is hard, life is a struggle. And then someone else comes who grew up not seeing struggle and say, what are you talking about? You know, life
because they didn't have that formulation.
Yes.
That
So basically, how we see life and how we see things is informed by the environment that we grew up in.
Starting from the tummy.
Exactly. Absolutely. Starting from the tummy. For now, let's just leave it from the tummy. Yes. So therefore, when we do sessions, when we see resources, when we do a resource state, we want to see how far does it go. So for example, they will connect to your inner child, and maybe the inner child is 5 years of age. Sometimes the child is sad. So you connect to the child, find out why the child is sad. So they will tell you why the inner child is sad, and when they tell you, then you do symptomatic therapy around it. So
is that the second phase?
No, that's the first stage.
That's the first phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you work with this child to such an extent that by the time they get out of this, the child is happy. So you don't leave the person you don't let the person walk away with a sad inner child. And
happy as a result of formulating
of the therapy. Yes, 100%.
Okay.
So basically what you do, you let the person, there's a child there who's watching all these things, because you take them back to when whatever happened, the traumatic event happened. So let's say the traumatic event happens at 4, parents are divorcing, as an example. The child is seeing the parents divorcing, and as a 4-year-old, at the level they're at, how they interpret it is that, oh, it's my fault. Therefore, the child grows up with low self-esteem, low self-worth, because they think, I've caused my parents to split because of the lack of understanding at that age. So now when the person is 20 or 30, you go back to that scenario and you open it up, and they are able to look at it with adult eyes. And just by looking at it with adult eyes, you are now rewiring the mind. Do you get it? Yeah, you are rewiring the mind. So you're changing the experience. You cannot change the experience. You cannot change the incident, but you can change the experience. Therefore, it becomes a positive experience. Like for example, you went into if you're happy with that, we talk about it. Yeah. You went into a positive one, and there's a reason why you went, because there's a message that your inner child wanted to tell you. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then that inner child told you the message, and you knew exactly what you needed to do once you were out. So so it depends on. So what happens is you connect. We cannot control it. Whatever inner child needs to come up at that point will come up, because it's the right time for it to meet you and to say whatever it is it needs to tell you.
I actually felt taller after our session. I think I said this to you.
You did, yeah.
I literally felt taller.
You felt taller, yeah.
But
it's energy.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the aspect that you're talking about. This formulation of these associations that we have with whatever negative experience is happening at that early age, and how that affects us on a grand scale, from the relationships that we have with spouses to relationships we have with general people, to the kind of societies that we're building. Yes. It just makes me think on that scale,
Absolutely.
How much of that is happening.
A lot. Just for example, in terms of relationships, how I see relationship is that relationships is like the yin and the yang, right? So you attract exactly the person who fits your dysfunction. So do you get what I'm saying? And
why is that?
Because that's what you used to. Yeah. That's what you used to. That's what you grew up seeing. No, not you want to. It's the energy you carry because of what you've seen happening at home. If, let's say, for example, you grew up in a home where your mother was a single parent, maybe your mother never married, was a single parent, or maybe they divorced and your mother was working hard. As a boy, you'd probably attract a wife who works as hard as your mother. You literally, because that's what you're used to, that's the energy you're used to, that's what you know, that's what you're comfortable with, even in your mind, but you're not aware, because that's all you know. You cannot attract something that you do not know. That is, do you get what I'm saying? You attract what you know, but when you attract it, you're not aware. But by the time you need deep in and you start opening up, you actually, oh my goodness, this is exactly like my dad. This is exactly how my parents were. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's almost like we are conditioned. It's the mind. You just naturally gravitate towards what you know.
So hypnotherapy almost becomes like the bridge to reformulate the stories that we're telling ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
And finding new stories to live.
Absolutely, yeah. In a way, yeah, you're right. Because I'll just give you an example of someone who. Let me just think. Someone who has a fear of. I'm trying to think. I can't think of I can't think of one right now.
Let's talk about. You mentioned something about procrastination.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember, and I'm going back to my session.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
That there's procrastination in itself. It's actually connected to something deeper.
Yes, it's a symptom.
It's a symptom of something, right? And you can go back and sort of attach the symptom to something.
Yes.
Emotional or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And I remember in my session, for instance, you helped me visualize whatever was happening in the background.
Yes.
And you put colors to it.
Yes.
You put adjectives to basically now visualize this thing.
Yeah.
What were you trying to do when you were doing
that? It's almost to make it tangible for the mind to work with.
Okay.
Yeah, just to make it tangible for the mind to work with.
Why is that? Is it because the mind is such a it's like almost like a machine that you have to give input to for it to understand something.
Yeah, like they say, it's like the mind is like it's like a computer. Whatever you put in, you actually get what. It's like garbage in, garbage out. But if you put in good stuff in, you get good stuff out. When I say garbage in, garbage out, for example of a child who grew up in a family where they're struggling, and they literally they struggle all their lives, and what I actually had a friend who's an accountant, and I mean, accountants are not supposed to have financial problems, but literally he sabotaged throughout his entire life because he grew up struggling and being poor, and the mind is still stuck in that. But even though he had the money, you'd find that he'll self-sabotage. He will spend money on the things that were not necessary, just so that to fulfill that. And to be able to change that, we need to re-examine why they have this behavior, why they're self-sabotaging. And when you open it up and the person can see it with their adult eyes, what is happening, then you're able to change it. It's almost like knowledge erases karma. So when you know, then you understand, and then you're able to change behavior, because you don't control yourself, something else controls you. It's almost like the mind controls you. You don't, the idea of self-control, there's no self-control. Yeah.
But that's what we thrive on. I mean,
that's what we thrive on. But it gets tired.
We try to control everything.
Absolutely, but there's no. It's an illusion. Self-control is an illusion. You can only control yourself to so much until that program that was instilled in you between 6 and 7 kicks in, and when it kicks in, it comes back. I'll give you an example with myself. During the time when I wasn't working, I literally focused on my weight. I started eating properly, and I literally lost 20 kgs in 4 months. And 2 years later, I started eating. I went back into corporate. I started eating. I could no longer control it. I remember this one time going to run, and I just felt my body was heavy. Like, I just felt this heaviness. I couldn't run. And imagine 20 kgs lighter. And now I'm feeling my body is heavy. I cannot run. And I remember I never went back to run again. And I started piling up weight. And it only, it kicked into me later on. Then I realized it was a program. There is a reason why I'm eating the way I'm eating. Like I actually told you today that after so many years, I literally discovered last week why I'm eating.
Well, do you want to get into that?
Yeah, I can get into that. And I'll give it an example, because I've literally been to, and because I've studied hypnotherapy, so I know how hypnotherapy works. You need to come with an issue and be clear what your issue is for it to be solved. So when you are not sure, the results you get are not sure as well. So I went into hypnotherapy to work on that, and we couldn't get there because the answer
the weight issue.
The weight issue. Because what came up was that I'm not in touch with my emotions. Do you get what I'm saying? And so I left it. So I was like, you know what? This weight issue, there's other more pressing things to work on myself. I'll see the weight issue later. And then I had another session with a colleague on the weight issue, where you can actually visualize yourself being thin and what are you eating. Literally, you can do suggestions around that. They only worked for 2 weeks. And then as I was driving in the car, and I'm thinking, but why is this such a problem? And then a word just came, this voice just came to me. It was like, that's because you're not fulfilled. So for me, weight is a spiritual issue. I need to figure out why I'm not fulfilled.
So you're trying to substitute
the fulfillment, but it's spiritual fulfillment with food, because the brain cannot tell. The brain cannot distinguish. Do you get what I'm saying? The mind cannot distinguish between the two. I'm not fulfilled. Yes, I'm not fulfilled. So you keep eating until you feel full. And actually, I went to a point where I would eat until I wouldn't stop until my tummy is full, until my tummy is sore. That's when I'd actually realize, oh my God, I'm full. And it's an underlying issue. So now, because I've cleared so many issues, now this issue is on the surface, is coming up, it needs to be solved. And now that's what I'm going to work with.
That's very interesting to me, because it takes me back to this conversation of brainwaves and how the mind operates, right? I actually wrote a piece this morning talking about how exactly that the brain can actually tell the difference between something that's imagined
Yes,
and
and
when
that's
you're actually
real.
experiencing
True.
something,
Yeah.
right? And that because of that, the fact that it can't tell the difference, you could essentially do anything anyway, even though that thing is imagined.
Yes.
And actually traverse that path to a certain outcome.
Actually, that's literally what hypnotherapy works on, because we work on your mind. You imagine yourself doing 1, 2, 3. And then you just zone into that and you imagine it, which is why with the question you asked earlier, why I have to put color and put that, because you see it. The brain
It actually sees it.
Exactly, it sees it, because therefore it's real. Even though it's imagined, because it sees it, it's real, and you are able to put almost like to work with it, because now it's tangible. Because think about it, how can you work with something you cannot see? You cannot work with something you can't see.
And it's funny that you use the word tangible, because tangible, it's like tangible to the brain, but not really tangible.
Yeah? But to the brain it is tangible, because if I say you are happy, you cannot recognize happiness. But if I say put a color to happiness, most people say pink, yellow. Those are nice bright colors. Do you get what I'm saying? Then when it's tangible like that, but also you first see it in your body, because the mind and the body are intertwined. So what happens to the mind affects the body. That's why they normally say the body stores energy. So let's say someone was actually molested or they were raped when they were young. The memory will close. That's how the mind works. You have a trauma and it closes it up so that you can continue living. Because imagine if you lived with such horrible memories, you would not be able to cope. So the mind, almost like it covers it.
It's like your mind is protecting
exactly, it's protecting you from the event. Yeah, so it closes it up, so you never remember it. But the body keeps the score. So what you find is that most people who've either been molested or raped, when they go, I had a client who literally, when they go into a lift and there's men, they go into a panic. Like they start having panic attacks.
The association becomes stronger.
Exactly. Because now when you're in a space with men alone, you just have this fear and you don't know where it comes from. And then people will come to me, I have this fear of men. I don't know where it comes from. And then when you open it up, you actually realize that when they were young, they were either molested or they were raped. And then with the all adult mind, they look into the situation and they're able to see that, because everything you do is an energy level. You can connect to someone because we're all energy. So when they connect to that person, they actually realize that, this person didn't mean harm. Probably they were 16, things were happening in their bodies and they didn't know what was going on, because nobody spoke to them. They were just experimenting. They didn't mean harm. And that mere fact of realizing that, you're actually able to let go of the situation and then you heal. Why? Because you've changed how you've experienced it. You do not change the incident, but your experience of it changes. So just getting that knowledge and understanding that they didn't mean you harm. They actually didn't know what they were doing. They were just experimenting. They didn't know what was going on. You are able to let go and forgive.
In fact, in my piece this morning, when I was writing, I was talking about the brain as sort of like a hard drive, right? That would take the snapshot and sort of store it somewhere in your body, right? It stores in your body. And when you have a similar experience or a similar situation like what you just pointed out, that hard drive is almost now recalled, and that situation is, and because it was stored in a specific way,
in a specific way, yes.
It's like that association becomes stronger and
stronger. Yes, yeah.
But when you go into it, again, I keep going back to these brain waves and creating new neural pathways that we can traverse. Is that you can go to that snapshot, speak to it. And now formulate a different relationship with it, and therefore have a much more different outcome.
Absolutely, you're right,
It just makes me think it's it's beautiful, because I think about the energy that we create, just the interactions that we have, whether it's on social media. It feels like there's a lot of negativity that surrounds our interactions as humanity these days, more so than before. I think for me, it almost feels like there's all these hard drives operating from these different environments, and they've created such a negative, vibration. And I just wonder if we just need hypnotherapy, all of us,
You know what?
to just heal.
You know what my one of my principal used to say was that a hypnotherapy principle was that we are all in a state of hypnosis. We don't realize it, and you need a hypnotherapist to take you out of that state. Because, for example, I'll tell you, one of the things that we may take lightly, because I've also been through it, it's like when you come from a background which was overly critical, whenever you see something, what you see, you first see the negativity of something, you don't see the positivity of it. And that's a mindset. That's the programming you've had. So everything that will happen, you'll first see.
That's the hypnosis, actually.
Yeah, that's the hypnosis that happened between 0 and 7.
What we call reality.
Exactly. So when you say, just to take you back, I know we've been saying this and we didn't talk about it. When literally a child is born between the ages of 0 and 7, their brain waves are literally at a theta stage.
Okay.
Yeah. Theta.
What's that?
Okay, there's brain waves. Our brain has different waves. We've got beta, we've got alpha, we've got theta, we've got delta.
Okay.
So beta, it's an awake state where we are in a beta stage where we are awake. So this is where you'll find us having worry, anxiety, being critical of what's happening here, because the conscious mind is very awake. So it's literally taking over. So that's the beta stage where we are at. But what you find when we start going into sleep, we start going into alpha. And then from alpha, you move into theta. And theta, you go into delta, right? Okay. So delta will be your deep, deep sleep. So when you get to delta, what you find even when you get into theta, what you find that your brain waves slow down, and when they slow down, your heart rate also slow down, your body becomes cooler, becomes cold. And that is why when you see people who meditate, they always have blankets, because when you are meditating, you're literally going into those states which you naturally go into anyway when you go to sleep. But what meditation does in hypnotherapy is you are able to access those states in the awake state with just your eyes closed. So you are awake. The same way that a person who meditates would be able to access that in those images that we access that have been stored, we are also able to access it with hypnotherapy.
So we are currently living in the beta state.
Absolutely. We are all, when we are like this, we're in the beta state. But when you go to bed, then your brainwaves start slowing down.
Do you think that's why, we spoke a little bit about this, but do you think that's why there's such a stigma around hypnotherapy? Because people are essentially afraid to go into different levels of their existence, actually, which it actually exists, but it's, it's, as you're saying, it's almost like the different levels where we're accessing right now a very visual reference that we can all relate to, right? Which is the beta stage that you're talking about.
Which is
but
awake
do you think
state,
that's now the sort of lower levels? I don't know if they're lower or higher in the scale.
It's almost like the lower levels, because your brain waves start to slow down, to slow down. Because here, your brain waves are so active. If literally someone hoots, you jump. But think about it when you're in a meditative state and someone speaks to you. It's kind of like you take time to respond because your brain waves have slowed down.
Okay.
Don't know. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And it's almost like, what can I say? Like, I know you do Vipassana as well. I've done Vipassana. So what you do with Vipassana, just sitting there, you are actually just accessing deeper and deeper levels of the brain waves, where you can actually open up. But the difference is that when you are sitting and meditating, you are waiting for anything to come up that needs healing. Whereas with hypnotherapy, we are going directly for the issue. For example, like you were saying, when someone comes with the issue of procrastination, in my brain, in my mind, when someone comes with procrastination, I already know what the possible issues are. One, it could be fear of failure. One, it could be perfection, and perfectionism is a form of fear of failure or fear of success. Or it could be low self-worth. They don't trust themselves. They doubt. It could be doubt. But I don't know what your issue is. So it is only when we go in that I actually figure out what, do you get what I'm saying? Because the reason why you'd have one of those things is informed by an event. So what we do is we take that issue you came up with, we go and look for an event that made you a perfectionist, or have so less of self-worth, or have, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or have fear of failure.
It's almost like this is a comedic association, but it reminds me of like the Ghostbusters. Like you walk in there with your cannon and you're shooting at these. Yeah, it feels very much like that. But do you think hypnotherapy has a place in in traditional medicine, in traditional healing? Not in the traditional sense, sorry, but just in the well-being of humanity, essentially. Do you think it has a place?
Oh, when you say traditional
like
medicine, as in Western medicine.
It's just okay. Let me put it this way: in the grander scheme of well-being.
I think it
on a mainstream level.
It has. I'll tell you, there's a place for Western medicine, and there's a place for hypnotherapy. For example, when someone breaks a leg, there's no reason why they should come to me. There's no way I can help them. But what you find is when someone has broken a leg or they've broken an arm, long after the bone has healed, the person still experiences pain. I don't know if you've ever had someone who says, when it's cold, I feel pain here, I broke my arm. It has nothing to do with the cold, it's the emotion that's stuck there. So basically when you break your arm, you find that there was an emotion that was associated with that. Even though the bone will heal, but people will still experience pain. And all they do is they'll give you pain tablets because there's nothing else they can do to you. There's nothing wrong physically, but it's an emotional issue. That's where hypnotherapy comes in.
That's interesting because
yeah.
No, the reason why I relate to that so much is I used to play basketball.
Yeah.
And while playing basketball, actually at some point I broke both, not at the same time, both my ankles at different times, within a period of maybe six to 8 months, right? And for some reason, something in me was just scared to play basketball again, because of that association of, oh man, I could break my ankle, or I could break this, or whatever the case is. I got over that by skating, which is much more dangerous than basketball. I went to skating and, sprained a few things during skating, but went back on and sort of recalibrated and learned how to get back on, rather than, I've done this, now I'm not going to do this thing again, right? And I got over that fear from that perspective. But what I think is happening there is that there's almost like a brainwave or an emotional association. That's why you don't want to, and therefore that's why you would feel the pain.
Absolutely, yes, it's just the emotion, and when you literally open it and we go there, you will find what emotion it is, and as soon as you release it, you no longer experience pain. So there is value, and I'll tell you, there is value in hypnotherapy because it's the only way that can change your mindset. There is nothing that, I don't know of anything that will change a negative mindset to a positive mindset. If you're just negative, you probably remain negative unless you make conscious effort. But as I say, self-control is an illusion. And one day we will all wake up into it. I mean, think about it when you procrastinate. Today you think you've got a hang of it, the next day you've procrastinated. You don't know when it's going to hit and when you're going to lose that control. So self-control is an illusion. But what you do, you can permanently change your brain waves to work for you, to be able to see different things in life. You can literally do that.
That's amazing. I want to ask you another question. There's a friend of mine who asked me about if there is some kind of ancestral gift that you might have, or is it completely disconnected to that?
I don't know. I don't know. I think intuition, being intuitive, being intuitive. As you would know, I did go through initiation. Being initiated to African spirituality. I don't know whatever that means. I did go through that, but what I found is that my intuition plays a big role. Like, for example, when someone walks into my practice, I already feel the energy of what's happening with them. I feel the energies. I feel the energy. Like, for example, before I even come in to teach a meditation class, I literally just the day before, I just visualize in my mind the type of people who will come into class, and then I just make a script tailor-made to the issues that they have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that help in any way?
It does help, because people will be like, oh my goodness, each time I came here, it's exactly what I'm going through, and they just don't know how I do it, but I actually just connect to them energetically just to figure out what their issues are.
Okay, I think I was asking about the sort of ancestral gift, and you mentioned that it's connected to your intuition, and the intuition helps you in your practice when you actually have clients and so forth. Is it completely connected to that, or is it a much higher vibration, or is it something that you see as directly connected to that ancestral path, or does it come with other things that might sort of enhance your practice?
Okay, I'm not clear of what you're asking.
So in other words, is it a more intellectual practice, or is it intellectual and spiritual?
Actually, it's both. It's intellectual and spiritual.
Okay.
In a sense that when someone walks in, I can literally sense their vibration of, okay, this is what this person is going through. And sometimes I look at the person through their eyes, and I can see what's happening. Like, and I look through people's eyes, I can see sadness, I can see guilt, I can see what's going on through their eyes. So that actually also helps me when we go into hypnotherapy, because what happens is you may be overwhelmed when we are down there. So when I've noticed something, I'll just nudge and ask questions there and there, just to see what's going on. So just to get better clarity, so that when the person is clearing whatever it is we are clearing, that I don't leave things lingering, that we just tighten it up, because I've actually picked up the energy that the person is walking in with. Yeah.
Okay. So the energy aspect of it is the intuition.
Yes, it's the intuition.
And the intellectual part?
And the intellectual part is the intellectual part is the knowledge. Yeah, the intellectual part is the knowledge. You're right. It's almost like it's a what do you call it? It's a
symbiosis.
Yeah, it's a symbiosis. Yeah, the knowledge. You're right. Yeah, because without the knowledge, if someone walks in and they have procrastination, if I don't have the knowledge, I'll work on procrastination, and procrastination is just a symptom. It's almost like if you see a tree with roots, the branches would be procrastination. But when you actually, the root is low self-esteem. Or it could be fear of failure or fear of success. So that's the root, and the branch is just procrastination, if I may say, yeah.
This is incredible. This is amazing.
Even when I have casual conversations with people and they tell me they have issues of this, like I already, do you get what I'm saying? Then you just get to okay, this could be, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is amazing. I remember asking you one question. It was not necessarily part of the consultation. I think it was after the consultation or before, can't remember. I asked you a question about manifestation.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I was very taken by your answer. You were talking about setting the conditions.
Yes.
Because manifestation is not a thing on its own. It sort of has to have a pathway to even get there, right?
Yes,
so the pathway is setting the conditions. What did you mean by that?
Okay, what I meant was that it's almost, I see manifestation almost like the same way as miracles. You get what I'm saying? And when I say, I know we talk about, I'm going to manifest this, I can manifest this, but manifestation is a vibration. It has to do with the vibration you vibrate at. By that, what I mean is you cannot physically bring things into life, but what you can do is you can set conditions for manifestation to happen, for miracles to take place. I don't know if that makes sense. For example, when you're starting a garden, you plant, you don't manifest the end result. You just plant a seed. But what do? You remove all the weeds that you don't need. You cultivate the sand for it to be ready for something to germinate or for something to sprout. You don't literally manifest. So how can you manifest things in your life? So this is just my take on it. Like, you set the conditions. You remove whatever it is that's blocking you being able to manifest the life you want. You remove fear. You remove shame. You remove guilt. You remove your self-worth issues, and then you're able to manifest. And manifestation happens. All the things you've always wanted, they start happening because you've removed the blocks that have been preventing that energy flow.
So it's an active process. It's not. You don't wait for things to happen. You participate.
No. Yeah, it's almost like you're helping it. For example, like when you plant, let's say you're planting seeds, or you do gardening. What do? You just prepare the soil. You make sure that the conditions are set for whatever it is to bloom. You don't necessarily make it bloom.
And then the miracle takes care of itself.
Exactly. The miracle takes care of itself. That's how I see manifestation. That's how I see miracles. And if you're not able to manifest what you want to manifest, or you're not able to if you don't see miracles in your life, I think you should ask yourself, what is blocking me? What energy is blocking me from manifesting what I want to manifest? And then you just remove those things, and then energy starts to flow, and then you're able to manifest. Yeah.
It's sometimes, I think a lot of people are scared of even asking the question honestly to themselves, right? Because I think in a lot of our situations, it's easy for us to pinpoint something that's outside of us, because we have a visual representation of that thing. Oh, it's my ex-wife, or it's this, or it's that, or it's, my keluana, or whatever the case is, right? And then that association is a visual representation for our failure, right? Whereas when you're actually asking the question to yourself, it's that process, that active process of weeding out.
Exactly, the things that are blocking you. It's what I would call that. It's actually kind of like a victim mentality, where you're always seeing someone as the issue, and it's also a mindset which you need to change for you to be able, because without changing that mindset, you'll not be able to see things the way they are. I've also went through a process where for everything in my life, I always had someone else to blame. And that was able to change, from slowly, just by working on my mind, by realizing that actually, why is this person an scapegoat? Why am I always blaming this person for my issues? And slowly just trying to figure out why am I blaming this person? How come this person, because this person doesn't control my life. They don't control what comes to me and what doesn't come to me. Why am I blaming it on them?
You sort of have to be very honest.
Absolutely.
At that level,
that's
right?
what it requires. And while you say that's what I find with hypnotherapy, is that people who are actually not comfortable with looking at themselves and looking and opening up to the negatives and to who they really are, they don't really enjoy hypnotherapy. Those people will come once and they don't come again.
You've just nailed something that I just realized, which is, that's probably where the stigma also comes from.
Yeah.
Is the fact that we're very dishonest, actually.
Yes, with ourselves, yeah.
And to go to that point,
you need to be very, you need to be very honest, I know with myself, I had to be like, I think one of the things that has driven my healing is that I've always believed that there's got to be something different. And also when I suffer, I kind of reached to a point where I'm just tired of talking about one and the same issue all the time. Like I get tired of hearing myself complaining all the time, talking about the same issue all the time. And that literally how hypnotherapy saved me, because then I wanted to, how can I change this? I can't keep talking. It's 3 years later, it's still the same issue. Something is wrong with me. I start thinking something is wrong with me. Why am I not changing? Why am I talking about the same thing I spoke about 3 years ago? And then that's how I actually started changing. Then I just go and I open it up, and I've had to be as honest as I can be. And that is why I can sit here and be able to tell you about my weight issue, that I'm not fulfilled. And someone else would like to say, oh, because you're doing this, you're doing that, you're fulfilled. It's work in progress. But if I cannot be able to talk about my weaknesses, how am I going to heal? So it starts there. You need to be able to look at yourself and be happy with someone else knowing, I'm not good at this. I'm not good enough. I'm selfish. I'm jealous. Because that's when you change it. It's almost like when you're able to face that aspect of yourself, then you can change it. But if you pretend it's not there, it stays there. But it doesn't mean other people don't notice it. Your friends will see it. The closest people will see it, because it will sneak in. That's
one of the things that I sort of picked up again from my session.
Yes, yeah.
Was this idea that, to me, it almost felt like I was almost doing surgery on myself,
Yes.
right? And you were there as the facilitator.
Tater.
You were not the
Yeah.
surgeon
No,
necessarily.
absolutely.
So it's like I was my own surgeon.
Yes.
And because of that, you know, there was a level of empowerment that I had to actually go there to that point, you know, and
Yes.
cut this thing out. So yeah, I feel like hypnotherapy should be part of mainstream culture.
It is. It's going to get there. I have no doubt. It's just a matter of time. It will get there. Because I'll tell you, the clients who come to me, they are just tired of popping pills. They're tired of this anxiety. They're tired of feeling like something is wrong and having things not changing. And slowly it's changing. South Africa hasn't caught up, but it's getting there. All the other countries, like if you go to New Zealand, to Australia, US, UK, it's literally taught in universities. So it's slowly getting there. It's slowly going to get there.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
This was very valuable and insightful. I think it helped for me to actually have the session with you as well, like an actual hypnotherapy session, to know what we're talking about. But yeah, thank you so much. And
thank you.
I wish you all the success.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool. I'm sure there's credits already right now.
What credits? What credits?
First guest.
Oh, first guest! Yes! I wish you could have asked the question. I know you wanted to ask the question.